Excellent. We're now recording. Let's wait a few minutes for people to show up. If people have agenda items they want to discuss, please add them to the document. We are a bit light on agenda today.
Mike, did you have plans to present your component config ideas?
Sorry, what was that suggestion? Asking Mike to present component config?
He had a document outlining changes to component configuration, and that kind of affects how you initialize. So I think there's general consensus that this is something we want, but how we get there and the process, I think, is the question.
Cool, yeah, that sounds good, if Mike's up for it. Okay, well, let's get started. We're 3 minutes past the hour, so this is the Kubernetes Special Interest Group for Cluster Lifecycle on the 9th of May 2017. The first item on the agenda is just an FYI that Upgrades now has a feature corresponding to it in the features repo, as well as the proposal that is still very much in draft, and I am actively trying to find time to work on it. I haven't made any more progress this week, though, so hopefully this coming week. Jacob, do you want to repeat your call for folks on the action items on the postmortem for 1.6?
Yes, please. We need help. If you care about the quality of kubeadmin and you want to see 1.7 go smoothly, please consider picking up one of the unowned action items from the postmortem. There's no updates since last week on the existing action items. We just still have 4 that are unowned. So if you're thinking about maybe picking up a feature to implement or a bug fix, also consider that we have action items to work on. That's it.
Cool, thank you, Jacob. Any takers? You will get public praise on record. Anyone looking for, are there any potential people who are interested in contributing who haven't spoken up, perhaps? Maybe we could help people get started with one of these. Do you want to maybe just go through the list very quickly, Jacob? We'll see if it piques anyone's interest.
Sure, we'll try the log awkward silences this week because we have time. Sure, unowned things. So we have a few variants of end-to-end tests, but right now they all use the WeaveNet CNI provider. So adding new providers, so we have additional signals, because right now our end-to-end tests can fail for a lot of different reasons. So it'd be great if we had a lot of SKUs so that if only one of them failed, it pointed to a more direct root cause. Defining a process of who should triage and or fix kubeadmin end-to-end test failures, and how. Right now that's kind of a one-man job. It'd be great to, and other SIGs have broken these as well. It's not always a change in kubeadmin that breaks these end-to-end tests. So yeah, having any sort of process around that, maybe a rotation. I don't know if anyone has ideas there. And then an actual release process specific to kubeadmin so that we don't drop the ball on anything. Just documenting simple steps like remembering to duplicate our release branch end-to-end tests, any documentation that we need to write, any additional manual testing that isn't currently automated, anything that we want to make sure that we don't forget every release. That can start as a super simple document and we can just add to it as we think of things. And then lastly, this could be more for someone in a PM role, but I think the scope of this is more Kubernetes wide, but happened to go poorly for kubeadmin this last time, is documenting some sort of incident response process, because when we push out a fundamentally flawed release, everyone goes into panicked ad hoc mode to fix things and firefight as quickly as they can, and we don't have a structured process around that. So it makes it really hard to follow updates, track what's happening. We have different types of customers that want different kinds of updates. So if you're part of the SIG, you just want to know, how do I help out? If you're outside of the SIG but within the Kubernetes community, you might want to know what's the best way, like the long-term fix. And if you're a customer, you just want to know, when's it going to be fixed? And last time we did a really poor job of just kind of having lots of ad hoc communication all across the board. It made like really low signal to noise ratio for any particular community looking for updates there. So just putting together a simple process of, as soon as we have some sort, if we've identified some critical bug in a new release, follow these few steps. It'll be an experiment at first. We'll refine it over time and iterate on it. But right now we have nothing, and that means that we just panic and things aren't very constructive. So does any of that sound interesting to anyone?
For that last one, I think we should get someone from the newly created SIG release to take a look at it, because there should be sort of refining the release process, which is going to eventually include, cross repo Kubernetes bundles. And this sounds like it's sort of right up the alley of what they should be doing as part of their initial charter. So I plussed in our TPMs from Google, and hopefully they can start tackling it as part of that SIG, or find someone in SIG to do it.
Cool, thanks, Robert.
Yeah, excellent. And these all sound interesting to me. I just don't have cycles to work on them, so I'm sorry to not put my own hand up. But also, not to dissuade anyone here from picking these up, but I do wonder if there's overlap with that. There is a dedicated testing SIG, right? SIG testing, is that right? Yeah, it might be worth putting a similar call out to that group to see if they might be willing to help with the testing related items on this list.
SIG testing is pretty overloaded.
Okay, everyone's overloaded.
Yeah, well, Luke, I would say that there is Michelle from SIG testing has signed up for one, which is sort of the infrastructure part that we are missing, which is notifications. But the rest of these are really sort of lifecycle problems to solve, right? Like increasing our test coverage is not something that the SIG test group would do. They would make it possible for us to increase test coverage and then expect us to actually write the tests or do the configuration to do that, right?
Understood.
So I don't think we want to try to lean on them to help us make our tests better. We want to lean on them to help us make infrastructure so we can make our testing process better.
Cool. No, that's a very good point. Okay, any other volunteers? Can I have one more long awkward silence for this meeting?
Hey. I think 218 looks interesting to me. This is Sash from Gravitational. I'll just take this one to warm up.
Whoa, it worked. Awesome, thanks.
Hooray, thank you. Okay, cool. Let's call that success for now. If anyone else wants to pick any of these up, please just jot your name down in the document or mention it later in the call. Good stuff. So Mike, do you want to talk to us about component config?
Yeah, I wanted to just intro this doc and then set aside time next meeting for a more thorough discussion. So the purpose of this doc is to highlight some issues that we have with the current way that we do config. I go into definitely more depth on the background right now than I do in this in the solution. The solution proposed is pretty minimal at this point, but I intend to expand it as we decide on specific conventions. I think that'll happen through discussion. But please take a look at the doc during the next week. Tell me what you think about the proposed problems. Let me know if there are any problems that I'm missing with configuration, and then we can start to discuss putting together a configuration solution guideline. I'm planning on inviting some people, some representatives from other SIGs to next meeting to discuss this. But that's the intent of the doc. Please take a look at it so that we can go and do a deeper dive next Tuesday.
Caleb noted that we should have a feature entry in the features repo for this. Did we not create one of those?
There exists a feature in the feature repo for this specific feature.
Perfect. Let's link it here so that people aren't confused as to why we don't have one.
Okay, I will do that. Any
And
questions?
by here, I mean both in your doc and in our notes, right?
All right, sounds good.
If you open the doc, it should be obvious sort of where this is being tracked to the higher level.
It seems to me like this is a long-going cross-release effort to make this become reality.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So I have a goal in mind for 1.7. I want to get this document ratified for 1.7 by stakeholders, which since this is a cross-cutting concern, it's probably going to be people from various component owners like SIG node and SIG networking for kube-proxy. I wanted to at least have some minimal guidelines and bring up 2 components up to the minimal guideline standards for 1.7. I have a section in the doc about how this can be done incrementally per component. So I don't intend to have this flush through for all components by 1.7. It appears to me that is going to be a lot of work from a lot of different people. It's going to span many releases, I think, to get us to somewhere that's consistent. Does that satisfy your concern, Tim?
Oh no, it was more like a PSA, I think.
Yeah, PSA.
Just so people. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
In the SIG PM meeting, just asking for demos for features coming in 1.7 before the release rolls out. Do you think you'll have just like a basic implementation of the first draft once we've decided on kind of an approach by the end of the cycle?
Yeah, so kube-proxy is actually the closest component to the current stated guidelines. It's I could demo what this would look like for kube-proxy.
Yeah, that would be awesome, actually. So I'll link in the SIG PM agenda, and you can slide in a place where you think you have time.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
That'll be great. And similarly, for upgrades, as we get closer to that working, that ought to also be demoable in time for 1.7.
Yes, and it'd be great to get someone to demo that.
Yeah, software first. But yes, we'll do that.
Yeah, implementing things before demoing could be a good way. One question: if we get kube-proxy to component config in 1.7, what will that mean for kube-ADM? Some like practical changes or just small things?
So before we start introducing these features into 1.7, we would have to promote. I think that I would like to promote at least the kube-proxy's configuration group to beta. I don't know if that's in the works for 1.7. I don't see it as a problem to stick with file-based or flag-based configuration for kubeadmin for kubeproxy in 1.7. And if we get it to beta and all the pieces align to get kubeadmin cut over to that using that, I think that's great. But I'm not going to force it.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
What flags does kubeadmin pass to kubeproxy today that we'd be concerned about moving over?
Nothing really, just a kube config file.
All right.
So from a config map. So
Do we have any concerns? Are we going to make any constraints around this, namely around upgrades? Like if there's a flop somewhere in between the releases where we have to switch from A to B, are we going to maintain, do we have any public facing statements about upgradability? And will that affect us?
Of configuration?
Well, yeah. So like if we're going to upgrade and we change how we're going to do default configuration.
So I think that, so we have a problem with configuration updates today for flags. Like we have flags that exist in certain versions and don't exist. And if you pass it to the previous one, it causes the component to crash loop. Now that we are moving to API group based configuration, newer flags are ignored, and defaulting is part of the API group. It is not part of the conversion mechanism. There's no like internal defaulting happens while the types are versioned. Therefore, defaulting is bound to a specific version of an API. So a change in defaulting would be a change in the API, which is disallowed as per our API conventions. So hopefully this will actually help as long as we follow the API conventions for versioning.
Okay, cool.
Just to clarify, Tim, are you concerned about the upgradability once we have switched to using component config, or the upgradability from where we are now into component config?
Upgradability from where we are now into component config.
Okay. That is a good question. That is not what I just covered in my answer. So right now we have actually already moved from using like the Cobra flag set defaults to an API, the API versioning defaults in kubeproxy. We actually did that, I think, in 1.4 with not very noticeable or unnoticeable changes. So how we did that is we replicated the defaulting that was happening from the flag set into the API group defaulting, and it seemed to work. And we tested that the defaulting had the same semantics. So it is possible. We just have to be careful. And then in the intermediate, while we have both flags and configuration files, there's kind of a natural precedence in which if like two are passed, in which takes priority. We can constrain that a little bit more with some work. But right now, how the process works is we run flags.parse, which fills a struct with all the required, or all the flags that are passed in from the command line. And if there exists a --config file path, we override all those paths with configuration, or all those fields in the struct with configuration from a file. So file configuration takes priority over flag configuration, and we could make it so that you can pass one or the other with a little work. That's open to discussion, if that would be a more acceptable behavior. And we are also going to start warning if people are using flag configuration. So the kubeproxy already does this. If somebody passes in flag configuration, we are going to warn that flag configuration is deprecated.
Cool. Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yep.
Okay, great. Apologies for the background noise. Does anyone? Oh yeah, there are some more agenda items from Lucas. Yeah, Lucas, do you want to take us through your pieces, unless there was anything else on the previous topic?
Sure. Just some status updates that might be useful. So everyone knows what's going on. First, I think the TLS bootstrapping graduation stable is on its way somehow, at least last time I pinged Mike. Just a quick status update. Do you have anyone, so we know what's coming?
Yeah. So I think we are intending to. It's not graduating to. It's not graduating to stable, but there is a new feature being added, which is certificate rotation. I don't know if, and that is definitely going to be alpha in 1.7. So the kubelet TLS bootstrap built into the kubelet is getting an extra feature, which will be an alpha feature. If we have time to test, then we might graduate the first feature that we've had since 1.4, which is just the initial TLS bootstrap, to a beta API or a beta feature. And as part of that, we are also making changes to the group approver and the controller manager to graduate that to a beta controller. So I think that the controller manager group approver is going to make it to beta. I know that the client certificate rotation is going to make it to alpha. I'm not sure if the initial kubelet bootstrap is going from alpha to beta. It depends on if Jacob Simpson has time to do that.
I see. Thanks. Yeah, from KubeADM's perspective, I think it would be good to let the kubelet do the TLS bootstrapping long term.
Yes, especially since that is going to be integrated with client certificate rotation.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll take that one for 1.8 then, when we have probably certificate rotation in beta as well.
That sounds like a reasonable timeline.
Cool. I'll write that down. Yeah, and you mentioned the CSR approver, that it would be updated and enhanced some way to support the new flow.
So the approver, so there's two changes that's happening to the certificates controller. One is it's being broken up into two controllers, one to handle signing and one to handle approval. This is kind of a technical debt cleanup that doesn't really have externally visible change. The change that will be externally visible is the group approver is not going to approve a single group. It's actually going to be moved to a subject access review. So it's going to integrate with authorization APIs. So as take RBAC, for example, you would be able to create an RBAC role binding and an RBAC role such that a certificate in a given context will be approved by the approver controller. So we would create the kubelet bootstrap group, create a role binding for that group to a role that has the ability to sign kubelet certs, or to request kubelet certificates, and then the approver would do a subject access review against the API, see that kubelet bootstrap user is able to create a kubelet cert, and then approve the kubelet cert. Whereas right now the group is hard coded.
Yeah. So is this coming for 1.7?
Yes.
Okay. So then we have to update KubeADM.
Yes, we will have to.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Because I was thinking about the flag. It's named something like insecure, experimental, approve everything.
Yeah.
CSRs. So
that is going to change. We're going to drop.
Yeah, cool. It doesn't sound really production ready. So
and we also have to create appropriate RBAC rules so that our bootstrap user can can get certificates approved.
Yeah, cool.
And I can
do we have
that.
Yeah, can you create a KubeADM specific issue to track that?
Sure.
So we don't lose it. And also link to the issue/PR in this meeting notes doc would be cool. Yep. And also I've tracked the kubelet dynamic configuration, I think it was named now, the proposal, the PR there, but I haven't seen any recent activity. Has it stalled, or is it like we will do component config first and then take the kubelet? Or
so there's a note about this in the configuration or component config doc. Some of the guidelines have exceptions. I think kubelet is a major exception because it is the component that is farthest away from being self-hosted. So it can't rely on primitives like config maps to receive configuration. So the kubelet configuration, component config, is going to be slightly different and slightly more complex than other components. And it also cannot be upgraded with a daemon set. All the work that Michael Toffin has been doing has been sort of to work around not having those primitives. And that is actually developing. It's not going to be in 1.7. I think he's planning on spending a lot of time on it in the 1.8 release. But it is being pushed along somewhat independently of configuration for components that actually do run in pods.
Cool. And yeah, just a thing I asked for some time ago. Could you create or someone else at Google, the Kubernetes XML nightly channel, so that we could test out kubeadm and kubelet kubectl easier with the packages?
So
I mean,
those debs are okay. So do we need them pushed to an apt repository, or do we need them pushed to a GCS bucket?
They are already in a GCS bucket, but preferably an apt repository, so that like people could test things out from like apt-get upgrade.
So I would be more inclined to start addressing the issue, which is to move our apt hosting off Google infrastructure. I would like to, I think that just a GCS bucket can satisfy the requirements for an apt repository. Maybe this would be a good starting step for that. Because, so right now, if people want to have CI that runs against nightly, that should be doable just by reading from the running dpackage install and then apt-get install fix. That should be equivalent to installing the packages from the central repository. If we really need a nightly repository, which is, I think it's probably only useful for testing because your packages will be updated every night to a bunch of broken builds. Then we should start investing in having an external process for building apt repositories.
Yeah, that's kind of
if it's really important. Then we could continue to host those on the packages, cloud packages. But I think that's the direction that we want to move away from. So it seems like investing more in infrastructure that targets that deployment is counterproductive or throwaway work.
Yeah, so it was just like, where are we at that? I'm kind of investigating with CNCF and I think it's Jeff Crafton maybe, and some others that have been working on the images from GCR.io to move the Docker registry. And this is kind of the same team to move.
I think the idea is that it needs, I think our end goal is to move them out of projects that out of necessity need to be only owned or have permissions from Googlers into,
yeah,
it doesn't
exactly.
even have to be off Google infrastructure or non-Google funded. They just need to be, we need to create projects in Google Cloud, for example, that we can give people on the release team, people in the community access to, and editor and owner permissions to, so that the release team can actually start publishing into these GCS buckets if that's the eventual target for Kubernetes releases. So we would have to do the same with our apt repositories. Right now, how those apt repositories are maintained is it is unfeasible for us to move those into somewhere where they can be accessed externally, because it is like a completely separate proprietary system. So what we need to do in the apt repository, which is more work than their general migration to community maintained projects, is we need to actually build a separate infrastructure or a separate way of building these apt repositories, which I've looked into, but there's a bunch of different options. I just haven't had enough time to spend it on flushing through. So a good start would be to go into the release repository and build scripts that take deb packages, build an apt repository, and push them to GCS so that we can point our apt-get installs at GCS.
That would be cool.
And that's something that anybody could tackle, I think. Anybody here, if they wanted to pick something up, or if they had familiar with after RPM, that would be something that would be great to pick up.
Yeah, I think it's a topic for SIG release, kind of, because in 1.7 we'd really like to make Anago do the stable, unstable pushing of the devs RPMs for us. Currently it's you, I think, that
and Jacob and
Jacob.
Jacob's awesome doc.
Yeah,
so we are trying to diversify. The best way to diversify is to have a script inside release that does this, but currently a release script inside release cannot do this because it does not run against Google public APIs.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Then maybe Alexander is willing to pick that up. If you have some basic pointers, Mike.
I will link the GitHub issue, and I will write some ideas on how to do this into that GitHub issue.
Cool. Yeah, using just pushing to GCS seems pretty straightforward. The actual push mechanism, and then just writing some scripts to do the generation of the right directories and so forth.
Yeah, exactly.
Seems a good way to go. Cool. Then just heads up for a KubeADM PR. We have a pull request that's making KubeADM use secrets for self-hosting. And yeah, I just, does anyone have some thoughts there? I think it's in line with what the direction we're going, right?
Sorry, was that a question, Lucas?
Yeah, just well, does anyone have any comments? Just more of that kind of question.
I guess not.
Seems so. At least I'm reviewing the PR, and Andrew that I'm working with is probably gonna make a final version this night or tomorrow, and I expect it to be merged end of week.
Cool. And is this the last agenda item that you linked to? The
Yeah.
The hot PR.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Does anyone else have any comments or questions then? Any other agenda items? Okay, well, I hope to actually be able to do some more work on this stuff in this coming week. I've been a bit busy with my other job, but yeah, thanks everyone, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Bye.
All right. Thanks.